welcome back. Today I'm having Indomie Goreng. They're just the regular kind. So grab your spoons, grab your forks, or grab your chopsticks, and let's get started. So I accidentally overcooked my noodles because I was on the phone and got distracted, and they are a little bit too soft for my liking, but because everybody's on lockdown and everybody's social distancing, I am not gonna waste food and I'm gonna eat it. I'm just gonna add a little bit of sriracha to make it tasty. Okay, let's take the first bite. Not bad. Okay, so earlier I saw on Instagram a terrible thing about people in China mistreating animals because of how they think some animals are contributing or making the virus worse. So they're torturing or killing dogs. Street dogs. And it was terrible to see. I follow Animal Hope and Wellness, which is an organization founded by a man named Mark Chang. Is it Mark Chang or Mark Chang? I think it's Mark Chang. He lives in LA and he travels to Asian countries to help rescue animals from being mistreated. And he's actually been through a lot. He's been kidnapped, beaten, and tortured because he's tried to stop dogs from going to slaughterhouses. And he's actually saved a lot of animals throughout this whole process. I mean, he's always on the front lines, like when the wildfires were happening in California and animals were being left behind or were stranded. His foundation and organization went out front lines and helped as much as they could. So seeing that this morning reminded me of when I used to volunteer and foster for an organization called Operation Pets Alive. And I feel like I have to give a disclaimer because I know people are gonna say, oh, you're an advocate for the right treatment of animals, but you eat meat. Okay, that is a very legitimate argument, and I'm trying my best to become a vegetarian or at least a pescatarian. I currently don't eat red meat or pork, and very rarely do I eat that stuff. I mean, I almost never eat pork, but every once in a while I'll eat red meat because my daughter wants a burger, or I just can't find anything else, depending on if we're traveling or where we're at and all of those variables. But I am trying my best. So, and also I just want to say I'm not an activist. I don't go out and protest and stop trucks and all of that. I mean, as heartbreaking as all of that is, I just don't know if it's my calling. So I more so consider myself an advocate for animals that suffer and don't have a voice, but I'm not an activist where I go out and protest. So at least that's how I see the difference in my eyes. So yeah, okay. So when I lived in Houston, I don't know if y'all know this, but Houston has a really bad stray problem. I mean, and I think that the true sign of how advanced or how compassionate a society is definitely shown through how they treat their animals. And Houston has almost as many strays, if not more, than the amount of people that live within Houston and the surrounding areas, which is just appalling. So when we moved there, my eyes were open, like I was wide awake to what was happening. And I didn't realize how bad of a problem kill shelters and all of that was until I got to Houston. I mean, you have your choice of whatever kind of dog you want at most of the Houston shelters. And of course, I'm a huge advocate for shelters and rescuing. So I've never bought a dog, and I never will, and I don't advise anyone to do that. It just encourages breeders to keep breeding and keep these animals in bad conditions just so that they can profit off of them. And there are some licensed breeders that are good, but with so many animals in the shelters, why buy one? You know, I mean, they come fully vaccinated and most of the time spayed or neutered, or you can even take them back to be spayed or neutered for a fraction of the price that you would pay to buy a dog from a breeder. And I find that dogs from the shelter are far more grateful and love you a lot more than if you were just to buy one. They know what they've been through, and they know how to be grateful. I promise you that. That is something I know for sure. So, my first dog that I fostered in Houston, I gave her a name, and her name was Harper, because the community that I lived in at that time was called Harper's Landing, and I found her in the dog park in the heat of the day, all by herself with nobody there, and it was like over 100 degrees with hardly any shade. So I took her home. and fed her, bathed her, and kept her safe until I found her forever family. Oh, it was so super sad because I wanted to keep her, but she was a bigger dog, and I had Liliana at the time, and she wasn't even 2 years old yet, so having a big dog around her wasn't ideal. I mean, her dad, my husband at the time, was not okay with it, so we couldn't keep her. Had I known what I know now, I would have just kept her anyway. Because, well, you know. Anyway. After her, I had a few others. Sammy. She was a black lab. Super sweet, super submissive, but very timid. If you opened the door, she would take off running. And I had to chase her multiple times because I didn't want her to get hit by a car. And she didn't belong to me. She belonged to this rescue group that I was volunteering for. And they put out a lot of money for her to see the vet and to get her health certificate. So essentially I was a foster parent, and I was like pretty much one of the people who would help the dogs transition from being in the shelter until they could go on transport, which was either by plane or by truck to a different shelter up north where it was less crowded, so they could be adopted out and find their forever family there. And it was really sad. I mean, I cried every time I had to take them for transport, but a few times I got an email from the forever family that adopted them, and it just makes it all worth it. I mean, it's so fulfilling to know that you were the lifeline for that animal, and now they belong to a family that loves them so much. So that was something I really enjoyed doing. It was crazy though. I mean, that's a lot to handle, especially when you take in a puppy. I had 2 puppies one time. Oh, they were so crazy. Their names were Hazel and Leslie. And they just ran around all over the place and pooped everywhere. I mean, it's not their fault because they're stressed from being in the shelter, and then when they get in a house, they just don't know how to behave. It just depends on what happened to them. So you have to have a lot of patience. One time I had this older dog. She was a really big dog. She was really, really beautiful. I don't know, she was a mutt for sure, but she was like 10 years old. And her name was Macy. She was so sweet. Oh my gosh, but in my house in Houston, I had a pool, and every time I would let her out to go to the bathroom at night, the first time I heard like a huge splash in the pool. And it was so strange because it was in the middle of the night. I thought it was really weird. So I go out there, and there Macy is in the pool, treading water on the edge of the pool trying to get out. Oh, it was the worst feeling. I felt so bad for her. Poor girl, I had to help her out. I'm pretty sure her sight wasn't that good because every time I'd let her out at night, she would fall into the pool and I'd have to rescue her. And I weigh less than 100 pounds, so for me, I mean, she had to be, I don't know, maybe 60, 70 pounds. So for me, who's not even 100 pounds, to have to rescue her out of the water of the pool, like, oh, it was a lot of work. But she was the sweetest dog. Oh, I wanted to keep her so bad. I also had this Apsalapsa, Apsalusa, I think that's what it's called. That kind of dog. I'm saying it totally wrong, I know. But she kind of looks like a poodle. Her hair's curly. Her name was Ginger, and she was so matted up, and she was like a caramel color. And when I brought her home, she smelled terrible. And I groomed her, I cut her hair and bathed her, and it took me like 2 hours. But once she dried up, she was the most beautiful dog I've ever seen, seriously. They call it foster fail. Like, I almost foster failed her because I really wanted to keep her. I wanted to adopt her. But because the organization makes arrangements for their spot on the airplane or their spot on the truck, when you foster fail or keep them and adopt them instead of letting them go on transport, that's a spot that you took away from another dog that could have been rescued, you know? Because these arrangements are made like 2 to 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time. So they don't encourage you to foster fail and adopt because of that. Because when the transport truck or airplane comes, that spot goes empty because you adopted them, because they already secured that spot for that particular dog. So it just is tricky and it gets really difficult. So that was my saddest one. I cried my eyes out. Like, it was so hard. And she went on an airplane, I remember. But about a month later, I got an email from her new mom, and it was so heartwarming. She sent me pictures of her running around and playing in the woods and like a stream. She lives in Maine now, I think. And it was just so beautiful to see her living her best life. So that was totally worth it. I mean, it still makes me sad, but I'm so happy that I could be that person that helped her get to her forever home. Done! I hope you enjoyed my stories about fostering dogs, and I hope you take the time to do something that you enjoy, that helps the community and other organizations that are trying to do good for society. It's a good time to research a lot of organizations right now that everybody's social distancing and staying at home, because there are a ton of organizations out there that help a lot of people plus animals. So, you know, whatever you can advocate for, definitely be that person. I mean, whatever it may be, for veterans, for the homeless, whatever it may be, because volunteer work is so important, and that's what keeps our society running and functioning at its highest level. So I always encourage it. And plus, it keeps you compassionate and helps you stay humble. So that's something I'll always tell my children to do. So I just want to share that and put that out in the world, especially with all the bad stuff that's going on right now. That's definitely something that I always want to advocate for. All right, well, we had an okay day today. I hope you did too. Definitely don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and click that subscribe button for the next video. Until then, see you next time. Mwah!